Hey guys, Lordy mercy. Okay guys, we gotta talk. So, first of all, I want to shout out my good friend Brittany over at the Compound 24/7 and her husband Josh, aka Death, from 23 and Fun and Lockdown 23 and 1. Thank you guys so much for shouting my channel out. Like, I've already seen new people coming over and subscribing to my channel, and you guys don't understand how much that means to me. Like, thank you from the bottom of my damn heart. Like, thank you so much. Hey Cindy, hey Angel, hey Sandra, hey Bobby, hey Annie. Welcome back, Annie. We've been missing you, girl. Annie's back in town, you guys. Hey Lee. So, the reason for the title today, we all know that I suck, but what am I sucking? I suck at computers. So, you guys, I have been working all night long and all day trying to get this damn computer to work. So, let me tell you what I've run into now. When I'm trying to download Streamlabs onto my computer, it's telling me it won't let me download it because my computer came with Microsoft Edge, and it's saying that it's not going to let me download the Streamlabs, right? So, now I called my sister and told her I need her to come over. We're going to have this figured out, y'all, by the end of the week. If I have to take this damn computer up to Best Buy and pay them to set it up for me, we're going to figure this out, okay? And we're going to have somebody on this damn channel by Friday. Mark my words, okay? I've already started advertising on my social medias like, hey, if you're in recovery or you have a story that you want to get out there, if you're a mom, if you're a dad, like, anything really that relates to being a person, you know, if you want to share your story, come on out. I know, I'm fighting. Let me tell you what happened, Tim. So I went on to download Streamlabs OBS because the way YouTube has it set up now is that if you want to live stream, you have to go through another like software or something. So I went to download that, and my computer is like telling me it won't let me download it because it's not Microsoft Edge compatible. So my computer is like brand new. I guess it's just not compatible with that kind of software. So I don't know if I can override that. So what I need to do, because I am completely computer illiterate, you guys. Like, you gotta understand. All my life, I did drugs. So this is all new to me, right? When I was in high school, by the time I was 17, I was high on drugs. So I didn't really learn a lot about computers. I mean, for God's sakes, my husband had to teach me how to do a resume, y'all. Whenever I was, try split instead. That's what Steph told me. Okay, split. Okay. Hey, George. Okay. Oh, Lord, y'all, George is with a girl. Okay, George, you better message me later. Let me know how it goes. X split. Okay, Angel, thank you. Because I'm like tripping over here going, why can't I get it on here? You know what I'm saying? And so I just want to put on some concealer and chat with you guys. So I'm not going to like do a full beat or nothing like that. We're just going to put some concealer on my pimples and chat for a little bit. The boys went and had a little boys' day because it's Father's Day, and they wanted to spend time together. Also, listen to what happened to Nate yesterday, you guys. Y'all are going to die. So, Neil and Nate went out to go to the playground because Nate has been literally begging to go to this one playground. It's like this one playground that's far away from our house, but that's the one he wants to go to, right? So Neil finally gave in and took him to that one playground that he's been asking to go to. And at that playground, there was a big old ant pile, right? And they were like playing water balloons. And so he didn't see the pile of ants. It was like right up against the concrete, right? And so Nate stepped right in this pile of ants. And he's really allergic to ant bites. Like allergic as in not his throat or will swell shut, but like when an ant bites him, his whole foot swells, you guys. Like it swells up and it blisters up, right? And so Neil called me and he was like, uh-oh, Mom. We got into an ant pile and Nate's foot is blowed up, right? And I'm like, oh, he'll be fine. Bring him on home, right? Yes, that's Annie, girl. Yeah, so now, you guys, I'm not even kidding you. His foot is like this big. So they went to get some Benadryl for his, to hopefully help that swelling go down and the itching. And it's got little itty bitty like blisters all over it from where the ants bit. I guess the kind of ants that bit him, they have like some kind of poisoning or something that they put in to their prey whenever they bite them, and that Nate's allergic to that, I guess. So he's okay. I mean, he's such a strong little guy, y'all. Because when they were on their way home, I was like, Nate, are you okay? Can you breathe? Because that's like my biggest fear is like him being allergic to something and having anaphylactic shock, like not being able to breathe, you know? And so I was like, are you okay? Can you breathe, right? Because Neil had me on speakerphone. And Nate goes, of course I can. And so I was like, thank you, Jesus. It just like worries me, you know? I'm a worrywart, you guys. So I'm a big worrier. And then I called, happy Father's Day, you guys, to all my fathers out there. Happy Father's Day. You know what we're going to do right now? I'm going to share with you guys a story about my dad. Let me go get my hair pulled up. Okay. All right, here we go. So first of all, I get my looks from my dad. Like me and my dad, we look exactly alike, you guys. He is Italian, big Italian guy. His name is Mark. He's got like a heart of gold. He's a big old softie, just like me, right? Tough on the outside, but soft on the inside. Well, when I was growing up, you guys, my dad worked as a postmaster. And well, at first he started out working as a like a mailman, okay? And he would deliver mail to, you know, the neighborhoods. And the neighborhood that he delivered in was the Hood, okay? The Hood in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So over on East Grand. And there used to be this store over there called Cooley's. Cooley's. And my dad would go on Cooley's and like talk to the guys and give them their mail. And then, you know, he would go across the street to Popeyes and get himself something to eat. Because my dad's like, you know, on the job, walking and mailing mail. Okay, all the people on that route knew him. They're like, Mark, what's up? And you guys got to understand, this was back when food stamps came in the mail. Okay, this was back when food stamps were stamps. And so my dad would bring the food stamps at the first of the month. So all the little ladies and stuff would be out there waiting for him to drop off their food stamps. Hey, Katie. And so he would be, you know, they loved him. They would always like cook him food, make greens and fried chicken and cheesecake and just all kinds of good stuff for him, right? And just good people in the hood, but they were good people. You know, my dad had so many good friends out there. Well, one day went over to Cooley's. He was talking to everybody in there, and then he decided he was going to go get him some chicken from Popeyes. So we went over to Popeyes and got himself some chicken. My dad's always liked spicy food. So he gets a spicy chicken, right? Ugh, I hate that. I don't know what it is, but I don't like spicy stuff. It like burns my stomach. So my dad's always been into real spicy food. So he goes over there to Popeyes and gets himself the spicy chicken. And he comes over, and across the way, there's this big oak tree. Now, you got to remember, my dad was a walking mailman, right? His route, he walked it. So he would park his truck down at the end and then walk all of it. So he walked over across the street and sat underneath that big oak tree with the shade and had himself his lunch, right? His spicy chicken. Well, he was sitting there, spicy chicken, eating that shit up. All right. Next thing he knows, he sees these crows, right? The crows over there on that side of town. I don't know what it is. Black crows, you guys. They were always like in that tree. Now that tree is gone, and there's a McDonald's there. This is how long ago this was. This was like 1989. I was 7. And so the crows were like swarming him, right? And so one landed over there beside him, and he said, threw him a chicken bone, right? The spicy chicken bone. That crow took that bone, y'all, and flew up in the tree. I mean, swooped it up and picked it up, right? And my dad went on about his business, eating his chicken. He said not even 2 minutes later, he looked over, and that crow dive bombed down, right, into this water puddle right there and started drinking that water because that spicy chicken burned his mouth. And my dad came home and told us that story. And me and my sisters and my mom, we laughed and laughed and laughed because you guys got to understand, my dad, he can tell a story like no other. And he came home and he's like, and that chicken's and they dive bombed in that water puddle and ran over there and drinking that water like a chicken or a crow would drink water out of a water puddle. And me and my sisters just died laughing. You guys, my dad is the one who taught me that, in order to, have a job and do good at your job, you have to take pride in your work and do a good job and do that job, and you'll move up quickly, right? My dad taught me everything I know about like my work ethic and like my finances. He taught me everything about that's right. We forgive, but we never forget, and he taught me about like saving my money. Even when I was in my addiction and I lived with my parents at this time, my addiction had just started to get really out of control. I was working at a restaurant called Rolando's. And every night when I would come home, you guys, I would give my dad half of my tip money to save back for me. And I was in my addiction. Like I was shooting cocaine in the bathroom at my job, And on the nights that I would come home, I would give my dad half of my tip money to save for me because he like literally drilled it in my head how important it was for me to save money and take care of my finances. So I was always like so worried about like not paying my bills and not staying on track because I didn't want to lose my car. I didn't want to lose everything I had worked hard for. Hey Captain, even though I was in my addiction, you guys, like I worked hard to buy my car. I worked hard to have the things that I had. Like I just didn't get them for free. At the beginning of my addiction, when I was like 17 to 25, I worked my ass off, and then I started getting in a lot of trouble and going to prison and shit like that, but that's how it is, you guys. Like it starts out when you're in your addiction, it starts out and you can handle it. You can work a job. You can pay your bills, right? You can do all these things that, an addict who has been in their addiction for many years probably has stopped doing. And that's what had happened to me. As my addiction progressed, I was unable to hold my job. I was unable to do what I needed to do, you guys. It was really, really a process, right? Okay, Cindy, love you, girl. It was really a process, you guys, of like me losing everything I had. But my dad was there every step of the way, trying to help me get my life together. And today I called him to wish him a happy Father's Day. Today I can talk to my dad, and he wants to talk to me. He wants to spend time with me. He trusts what I'm gonna do. He trusts me when I tell him I'm gonna do something. When my addiction got so bad, you guys, my parents moved to New York because I was driving my parents crazy, and they were so upset because I was homeless on the streets. I was talking to myself. I was seeing people that weren't really there. I was so afraid of everything because I was in a constant state of hallucinations because I was never, ever sleeping. Never sleeping. I remember one day I went to go visit my parents before they moved to New York because me and Neil had just started dating, and I think I had been with Neil for like 6 months, you guys. And my parents had been always talking. My dad was telling me, we're going to move. We're going to move to New York. You guys are driving me crazy. I can't watch you kill yourself, right? That's what he would tell me. My dad he does not trip. He does not mix words. Like, he just says it, you know what I mean? And so he was like, I can't watch you kill yourself. You know, you're so smart. I don't understand why you can't stop. Well, that's what he would ask me all the time. Like, why can't you just stop? And I would go to see him, you guys, and I would just be so high. I would be so high and so skinny. Like, so skinny, you guys. Like, this right now is so not what I'm used to because I was so sickly and so skinny when I was in my addiction. And I don't mean like cute skinny. I mean like black circles under my eyes looking like Skeletor skinny, okay? Me and Neil went to go visit him, right? And I went to my parents' house and we had stayed the night that night, me and Neil. And I woke up that morning, you guys, and I was washing my hair, right? Taking a shower. I was taking a shower and I went to rinse my hair out, right? I'm rinsing my hair out. You guys know how much hair I have. Like, I've always kept my hair hella long. And I'm rinsing my hair out, rinsing it out, and all of a sudden, I pull out like this much hair from my head. And I pull it out, and it comes completely out. And this whole half of my head right here was bald. Bald. My hair had fallen completely out from the root. And I called my parents and Neil in there. I screamed. I was like, oh my God. You know, like, this is how ignorant I was. Oh my God, I've got cancer. That's how ignorant I am, y'all. Oh my God, I have leukemia. Like, this is what I was thinking in my mind, in my drug mind, okay? And my dad looked at me and he goes, no, you don't. It's from all the fucking drugs you're doing. And I just remember being like, what are you talking about? I don't do drugs. You know what I'm saying? Like, as if nobody knew. And that's when I looked up alopecia. And I thought, maybe I have alopecia, right? Alopecia areata, which is, it's a autoimmune disease that it's triggered by stress on the body, right? Anxiety, things like that. Because not only did my hair fall out right here, but I was starting to lose patches of my hair, you guys. My hair. I love my hair. It's like Samson, right? Cutting Samson. Isn't that right? Samson and Delilah? Wasn't Samson the guy who had the long hair? They cut it off and he lost his strength. It's like cutting your hair off and losing that strength, right? All my hair just started falling out from different spots all over my head. At this time that my hair was falling out like that, you guys, I was on methamphetamine and I was eating copious amounts of methadone pills that were not prescribed to me, okay? And, God, I just remember, you guys, okay, girl, okay, Cindy, love you. The minute I stopped taking methadone, the minute I went through withdrawal and got that shit out of my system, my hair started growing back. I don't know if it was because I stopped doing methadone, but I have a very big suspicion that the methadone and the meth, both of them, were so hard on my system, my nervous system, because you guys have to understand. I would do methadone and I would stay up all night long and I would wander around my apartment, right? At this time, I was sleeping in this trap house apartment. It was disgusting, you guys. And I would wander around my apartment and I would run into shit. One time I broke my fucking nose because I ran into my alarm system that was sticking out of the wall so damn hard. The minute I stopped doing methadone, my hair started growing back. Okay? Did I stop doing everything? No, I was still on meth. And I was still shooting Roxy's. But I took out the methadone because, and this is not against anybody who uses methadone for recovery, because if you're using it therapeutically from a doctor, then it's probably serving you just fine. But for me, you guys, I would take like 15 methadone 10 pills at a time. And then I would go into these nods where I was half awake and half asleep. And I would wander around like that. I would drive my car like that, you know? And so it was a lot of stress on my body, you know? Because then I wasn't eating. Right. So I think it was a combination of staying up and not eating from my meth and methadone and you know, abuse. Because that's what I would do, you guys. I would not eat for days. And I would go into these like horrible drug psychoses where the only person that could talk to me at this time when I was in these like weird psychoses was Neil. Because nobody else understood what was going on. Everybody just thought I was crazy, you know? Neil had me over for dinner one night with his family. And do you know how it talks about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, how we addicts and alcoholics, we get tight at just the right times. So I had this like date to meet my husband's family, right? And I'm supposed to be coming over and eating a breakfast with them and spending the day. And your girl decides to get loaded before I go in, right? And so days, you guys. I wouldn't sleep for days. And it's like right when I would have something important, I would like get fucked up. Or when I had to go to my job, or when I needed to go take a drug screen for probation, you know? Well, I met Neil and we met over, he came and picked me up from the little apartment I was staying in. And because see, the way it was his parents wouldn't let me live with him anymore because I was just so fucked up, you guys. So he helped me get that apartment, and he would sleep there with me sometimes, but most of the times he would sleep at his parents' house because they were doing everything they could to get us away from each other because we were fucking drug addicts together. We were toxic. And so even my parents were like, listen, we really like Neil, but y'all are both addicts. This is not going to work. Right? They were like, you guys are going to end up killing each other because y'all are just getting high all the time. But we wouldn't listen, you guys. Like, we just wanted to be together so bad, right? He was the first person that I ever met that understood me. Well, we came over to eat with his parents, and I had been up all night long, you guys, on meth and methadone at this time. Okay, I'm talking like not a wink of sleep. And I was like going into that weird reality where like I knew that people were around me and that I was talking to them, but then I would be at the conversation at the table, right? But then I would like phase out into some other conversation in my mind, right? And so it was like I would make sense for a little bit and they would think I was okay. And then I would phase out into this other place, and then I would stop making sense. And so I remember Neil's dad looking at me and going, are you high? And y'all, just like my dad, Neil's dad did not beat around the bush. He was a Vietnam veteran. He went to war, and he got sprayed with Agent Orange. I mean, like, they called him Crazy Al because he didn't fuck around back then. And so when I met him, he told me that they called him Crazy Al and that I didn't need to fuck around with his son, right? And I remember just being like, no, I'm not high. But they knew I was high. And I cried and I cried and I cried because I was so embarrassed because I made a complete asshole out of myself. No wonder his parents didn't want me to be with him. Like, I couldn't even come and eat dinner, you guys. Like, and act right, right? I couldn't even come and eat dinner and have a conversation. So then my parents decided, me and Neil ended up getting pregnant, you guys. I don't know why I'm telling a story, but it's going to all come back to my dad. So that's why we're telling it. This all comes back to my dad. So then me and Neil, after about 1.5 years of being together, we got pregnant with Nathaniel, okay? It was the latter part of 2013, we found out that we were pregnant with our son. And I remember thinking, I'll just have an abortion, right? I'll just have an abortion. Neil's not going to want this baby. He doesn't want to be with me. Like, this is just crazy. We're never going to work out. And so his parents were like, listen, we want you to come over and we want to sit down and we want to talk, right? And so I was like, all right. So me and Neil got together and we went over to his parents' house and we sat down and we talked, and I told them about the abortion idea, right? And they said, no, you're not going to have an abortion, right? And I was like, are y'all sure you guys want me and your family, you know? Because that's how it was, you guys. Like, I always felt like such an outsider with my husband and his family. I never felt like I was good enough. Because Neil is so much smarter than me, and he comes from a little bit of, you know, I don't know if you would say wealth, but they're well-to-do, right? And my family is just a little crazy, you know? Like, we're just crazy. We're just us. And my parents are hardworking middle-class parents. Like, they can't pay for me to live somewhere, right? They can't pay for me to have a house or give me a car or, like, take my son if I need him to be raised, right? Like, they just can't do that. They don't have the means to do that, right? They work their fucking ass off to have the things that they have. And I never felt like I fit in with Neil and his family because I always felt like they were like one notch above me. You know what I mean? I always felt like they were like better than me. And so when I got pregnant with Nathaniel, I thought for sure they didn't want me to be in their family, you know? And that's when they were like, listen, you know, we want you guys to be happy and we love the both of you very much. And that was the first time that his parents had ever told me that they loved me and they cared about me. You know, because I always thought they hated me because I came into their family, you guys, and Neil was already fucked up on drugs. And so I just came in and got him even more fucked up. You know what I mean? And so I always thought that they thought that that was my fault, you know? And I always felt like they kind of blamed me for that. But I didn't do anything. Like, I just came in and kept doing the same things with him. We did it together. We were both sick. And so we sat down and we had a family conversation. And that's when I decided, like, I want to have my son. I don't want to not have him, you know? And so I had already had an abortion, you guys, when I was like 24. And it was really a bad situation. And I look back on it now and I do regret it. Like, I regret doing that because I think, you know, if I had had my baby when I was 24, I might have turned my life around, you know? But I might not have, you know, so I can't, like, focus on what would have been. But I think about that all the time. I think about my baby and how I could have gave up for adoption, you know? I could have done something differently, but I didn't. My drug-addicted brain couldn't make good decisions, you know? I just decided and had an abortion and never looked back. And then after having that abortion, that just fueled my addiction even more. So once I found out I was pregnant with Nathaniel, I remember being like, I've got to get sober, you know, because you guys have got to understand. When I found out I was pregnant with my son, I was in full-fledged addiction. Like, I was probably the worst I've ever been. And so getting pregnant with Nathaniel was kind of, it was kind of like messing up my game, you know? It was messing up my high. I couldn't, like, I couldn't do the things I wanted to do and people know about it, right? Because then if people knew I was getting high while I was pregnant with my son, then what would they think about me? You know, that was what my mind was telling me, you guys. My mind wasn't telling me, oh, you can't do drugs because you'll harm your child. My drug addict mind was telling me, what will people think? Everyone will know. Well, that didn't keep me from doing it. And I really struggled my whole pregnancy. You guys, I was on methamphetamine the whole time I was pregnant. I was working a job almost up until the time I gave birth to my son at Sonic as a car hop. So here I am, high on meth, working at Sonic, and for God and everybody to see that I'm high and I'm pregnant. You know? I don't really know if a lot of people knew at my job because I was very manipulative. I would not show up, right? Aw, that's awesome, Tim. You don't ever have to be afraid, you know? Okay, so let's get into that. So while I was pregnant, Lee, I'm going to share that with you right now. And so this is why I tell my story, because you guys don't understand. So I was pregnant with my son and I was injecting methamphetamine and oxycodone. More meth than anything else, but a lot of opiates also. On July 3rd at 5 a.m., I had been up for 3 days and I took a capsule of meth that morning. And when that capsule kicked in, I just remember this rush of heat going all over my body. And I was high. Like, I literally looked at myself in the mirror and my pupils went. And so I'm literally 9 months pregnant. My belly's out here. And you guys, like, I'm not proud of this, but I've got to share with you guys what happened. So that capsule kicked in, and here I am, 3 days awake. I've been up for 3 days. And the next thing I know, I had this pain, unlike any other pain I can ever explain to you. It was like somebody was taking a knife and stabbing me in the lower back, right below my spine. In and out, in and out, in and out. And then it would move from my back to the front of my belly, right where Nathaniel was laying, right there, right? And the pain was so intense, I knew that I was going into labor. And so I called Neil. He was at work, and I said, listen, I'm going to have this baby. It's happening right now. And I was sleeping over at the house with Neil's parents, and I walked over to Neil's mom's bedroom, and I knocked on the door and went in, and I told her, I'm in labor. I'm going to have this baby. And so I called Neil, and Neil came over, and we went to the hospital at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, you guys got to remember, I was high as hell and scared that they were going to take my baby. I knew that I was going to the hospital under the influence. I knew I was high as fuck. At 8 a.m., July 3rd, I went in, and I was only dilated to like 2, so they sent me home. I came home, and I stayed here until 8 o'clock that night in labor. I was in labor the whole day at the house. I was getting in the bathtub. Y'all, it was so bad. I was having back labor. The pain was in my back. The only way I can explain it to you was that baby was moving and going down the canal, and it was hurting like a motherfucker. And I was also tweaking. So my senses were extremely like, you know what I mean? And so I went into the hospital at 8 p.m. and I was 8.5 centimeters dilated. And I pushed from like 8 o'clock. They gave me an epidural. And so my legs went completely numb, and I couldn't push because I couldn't feel anything. So I had to wait 30 minutes for it to wear off. Then I started pushing, and by 1 a.m. July 4th morning, Nathaniel was born. When my son came out, you guys, he was perfectly fine. It was a miracle. The only other way I can explain this to you is that my son was protected by God. My son came out, and his scores on his, they give the babies these tests when they first come out of your belly. They check their breathing, they check their crying, they check their temperature, they check their poop, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that they don't have drugs in their system, to make sure that they're not going through withdrawal, to make sure that they're healthy and happy, right? And Nathaniel was perfect. Perfect. He scored high on his test, on both tests. And he was completely fine. In fact, they gave him to me like 2 minutes after he came out of my belly, and he latched on, and I started breastfeeding like that second. They were running tests on him for 3 days because, I don't know, they just were doing that kind of stuff. I guess they do that whenever you're in the hospital. I was in there from July 4th to July 6th, and then they let me go home. I guess they hold you after in there to like let you heal and to teach you how to like, because he split me open, y'all. Like I had to get stitches down there, you know. But it was so strange, you guys. Like he was perfect. There was nothing in his system. He was clean as a whistle, and they sent me home. Right? They sent me home, and so. Oh my God, Tim, it's like this pain. That's the only way I can explain it to you, is that all the pain that she would normally feel in the front, that's what it is, Angel. All those scores were he scored like one below the highest score. I think you can go up to 10, and he scored like 9s on all his tests or something like that. Because I remember my mom saying, his APGAR scores are perfect, because my mom knew I was high. She was there with me when I delivered my son. And so my parents had already moved to New York, and they came, my mom flew down to be with me for the birth of my son, because I needed my mom there, you guys. and she helped me because I didn't know what to do. Like, I had never had a baby before. You know, it was very, very difficult for me. So, he was born, and he was born completely perfectly fine, which is a miracle. And that's why I tell my story, because I don't think you guys understand. Like, I'm not lying. I wasn't just some, like, barely there drug addict. I wasn't like I was a freaking strung out mess when I gave birth to my son. And the fact that he came out with nothing and he was perfectly fine is a miracle. It's a miracle. That's the only way I can explain it to you, is that it's a miracle. It's a miracle that he didn't get taken away from me that day. They sent me home with my son. That 2 days later, I went home, and I started, breastfeeding, and I started out, and I was staying sober, you guys. I was doing good, right? I was really doing well, right? I was killing it. I was staying sober, and I was staying at home. I wasn't going anywhere. I was basically, what I thought I needed to do to stay sober was lock myself in my house. I was like, if I'm going to stay sober, I just got to stay at home all the time, right? That'll help me. And so I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah, just whatever the best score was, that's what he got, you guys. Because that was 4 years ago. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is that his scores were fine. Like, there was no reason for concern, right? There was no reason for concern. So they sent me home with him. Because I think that if he had done bad on those, that probably would have been a different story, and he probably would have gotten taken from me that day. But for some reason, by the grace of God, you guys, they weren't concerned with me. They weren't worried and I was high. My heartbeat was high. Everything was high. I mean, because whenever they did the tests on me, at one point when I was in my labor, my heart rate was so high, and so was Nathaniel's. And that was because I was like on meth and under a lot of stress. Do you understand what I'm saying? I was under stress because I was giving birth and I was high. And I knew that I was high. I knew that they were either going to know it or they weren't. And I was going to get my son taken from me that day. Like, I hate to say this, you guys, but I was preparing myself for the worst scenario, right? I was comparing myself for the worst case scenario of my son being taken from me because I was on drugs. And if he had been, you guys, like, I totally deserved it, right? It was not like I was going to fight him, because I knew that I was high. So, we took Nate home, and I did really well for a little bit, you guys. Like I'm saying, my mom stayed for a week and taught me how to breastfeed really good, and to kind of, like, I had to learn, like, new ways to get Nate to latch on, because, like, with my boobs at that time, they were so full of milk that they were getting engorged. And so they were, like, really big, and they were hurting me, right? They were hurting me really bad because they were so swollen and full of milk. I mean, they were rock hard, y'all. Rock hard. And so my mom was, like, showing me, hey, in a football position where his head lays right here and he can latch like that, and his little legs will hang back here. And so I was doing, like, really well. And then, like, my mom left, and then I hadn't showered for 2 weeks. And I started realizing that I was depressed. Like, I didn't want to get out of bed. I mean, of course I did, because I had to take care of my son, but I was really struggling to, like, just do everyday functions. So I was talking to Neil's dad, and Neil's dad, you guys, when he was alive, like, he was so adamant about us taking care of our mental health, because he was diagnosed with PTSD after the war. And he knew, like, he actually went through this really bad crisis when he was 40, and he quit working, and it was just a bad time for their family, and they, like, really struggled, and it was because of depression and PTSD. And so he was like, it's really important, you guys, for you to take care of your mental health. And so he knew I was struggling. his dad always knew, like, Neil's dad always knew when I was going through something. He could just tell. And he would always ask me if I was okay. I remember whenever I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know I was pregnant. And he said, "You're pregnant." And I was like, "No, I'm not, Al. Quit wishing that on me," right? And then a week later, I went and got a pregnancy test. And I was pregnant. So Neil's dad was always like really in touch with me mentally, you know, like he could always tell things were going on. And so he was like, "You're struggling, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Let's go to the doctor. Let's make you an appointment to see Dr. Pounders." And I was like, "Okay." So they made me an appointment to see their family doctor. And I went in, and that's when I got diagnosed with postpartum depression. You know, I told him I hadn't taken a shower in 2 weeks. I was struggling to even move and get out of the bed to take care of my son. And it wasn't because I didn't love Nathaniel. It wasn't because I didn't want to take care of him. Yes, what happens is the milk comes in so quickly that the baby can't get it all fast enough, and the milk starts hardening. It hurts so bad, and the only way to get it out is to express the milk. And so I went into the hot shower, and I started expressing my milk on the floor of the shower, y'all. Like, that's the only way I could get it all out. And I started pumping milk. That wouldn't get, I mean, it was so difficult. But I went and got put on Lexapro. And that's when I first started Lexapro, was after my pregnancy, because I was struggling really bad. Well, after that, you guys, I started struggling again, even more. And the reason I think I struggled is because I tried to get sober by just stopping drugs. I didn't start any kind of program. I didn't go to any meetings. I just stopped using drugs because I had a baby, right? So, like, I wasn't doing anything to stay sober. I was just trying to stay sober at my house. So what would happen is people started coming around. They started coming around to visit me and Neil and see the baby. And one thing led to another. And one of our old friends came over, and we left Nathaniel here with his mom and went and got high. And that started the whole cycle back in motion. So now you have me and Neil that have a baby, and we're high. We're high all the time. And that went on for about 10 months after my son was born. And then my friend called DHS on me and reported me for negligence. Reported me for... She reported me, this is her words verbatim. She is high out of her mind. The baby is walking around in a shitty diaper with shit all the way up his back. And, yeah, that's what she told the people, which was true. I remember the day that she did it, and I remember exactly what she's talking about. Nathaniel, I hadn't changed his diaper, and I was just really high. And I was tweaking on something in my bedroom, and I wasn't paying attention to him at all. That's why when people say stuff about me and my parenting, it really bothers me. Because I really try hard to do so much better than I was doing. And I know that the way I was before was terrible. I know that I was a bad mom. I know that I wasn't paying attention. I know all of it. Because it's true. So when people attack me about my son, it really fucking bothers me. Because I am not the same person I was. I do everything for my son now. In fact, I don't discipline him enough. And that's one of my downfalls. That's one of the struggles that I have. Is that I have so much guilt from when he was little that I don't know how to work through. And I try every day to do better, but it's really difficult, you guys, when you have your child taken from you because of your own actions. And so, DHS called me, actually, because they had came to my house, like 3 times, and I hadn't answered the door. I think I was probably high, you know? Hey, Lori. And they called me and they were like, we need you to come down here, right? And so I went down there and I took a drug test, you guys. And for some reason, I only failed for benzos and opiates. I didn't have meth in my system at the time. And the rules with here in Arkansas back then were that as long as you didn't fail for methamphetamine, they wouldn't remove your child. They would just put you in the system and you would have to like start parenting classes. And, you know, they would come visit and check and make sure the kid was okay and that the house was clean and that they had a good place to live, which we were living here in this house. And so she assured me that, you know, Nathaniel wasn't going to get taken away. And so I was so grateful, you know, and then they came to my house a day later and told me that they had to take him away. They had did some digging and looked into my background and found out that I had been on drugs for a really long time, that I had been to treatment over 5 times, that I had been to prison. And they found out that me and Neil were both under the influence. And so they didn't feel comfortable leaving Nathaniel here with me and Neil, and both being high. And so at that point, we asked them if Nate could go to Neil's parents. And they were like, well, they have to, you know, fill out paperwork and we'll see if we approve them. So I was hopeful that he could go to Neil's parents so that way he wouldn't be in some stranger's house, right? Well, they denied Neil's parents because they said they were too old. Neil's mom was 65 and his dad was 70 at the time. And so that really pissed me off because his mom is more active than I am. You know, she's like a beast, you guys. She bowls. She does. I mean, she's just like, she's a freaking active granny. Okay. She does not mess around. And so I was pissed because I just felt like the system was trying to fuck me. And that's what I truly believe, you guys, because the way we got done dirty by DHS was so out of control. I truly believe that they took our son because they were making money off of it. And that if he went to my father and mother-in-law, then they wouldn't make money. So he had to go into care. And he could have went to my father and mother-in-law or to my parents, but they did not want to allow him to go there. You know what they wanted to allow him to do? They wanted to allow him to go to Neil's sister, who is a foster care person. And I wouldn't let her have my son because Neil's sister cannot stand Neil. And they still don't talk to each other to this day. And so when she offered to take Nathaniel, I knew right then that she was going to try and keep him from me. And I said no. And I prayed. I went to treatment that night. I actually went to detox. And then I went into treatment that Monday morning. And I prayed to God that a family would get Nathaniel that was safe and loving and that would treat him like that he was their own. Because deep down inside, I knew I couldn't take care of my son. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to stay sober. At all. At all. I had never stayed sober. I had been on drugs since I was 17. The only thing I knew how to do, you guys, was hustle and manipulate and get into places where I could, like, stay on my feet, you know? And even towards the end of my addiction, I was getting so bad in my addiction, and I was hallucinating so much, and I was just so dirty and skinny and grunged out that I wasn't, like, able to get guys to let me live with them anymore or hook up with dudes and get free dope. Like, my hustling game was running low, right? And I wasn't willing to, like, sleep with old men for free house to live in. I just couldn't. That's one thing I could never get myself to do was, like, prostitute with old men. I would hook up with my drug dealer who was like 30 years old or, you know, like, and he was cute and everything, but I could never, like, prostitute to these old, I could not do it. It was like my dad, you know what I'm saying? And so, like, my hustle game was getting so bad that I didn't have any more ways to have a way to live or have a way to be okay except for be on the streets, you know? And so I knew that my son being taken from me was the best thing, but at that time, it hurt so bad. I remember going into treatment, you guys, and in rehab, I was still getting high in rehab because at that time I had so many court dates to go to for DHS and visitations with my son that I was taking Xanax. Like, I just could not cope with it. And so I was having Neil get me Xanaxes. And 2 weeks into my treatment, they fucking caught me. Hey, Shay. 2 weeks into my rehab, they caught me getting Xanaxes delivered to me from Neil. And I remember they were going to kick me out. And if I had gotten kicked out, you guys, I probably would have never gotten Nathaniel back. But for some reason, they gave me another chance. And I stayed there for those next 2 weeks, and I did everything they damn told me to do. I mean, hey, Shay, love you, girl. I mean, I did everything. I spit shined the kitchen floor, okay? I scrubbed the toilets. I did anything they told me to do. I was learning about my disease, and I started to hear what they were saying. I started to understand the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and actually want to learn. I don't know what changed for me at that time, you guys, but it was like shit hit the fan and I knew life was getting real and that I couldn't fucking do it anymore. I couldn't manipulate them anymore. I couldn't tell lies. My son's life was at stake, and if I didn't get the shit, then he was going to go and be with another family for the rest of his life. So I got out of treatment, and that's when it really got hard, because when I got out of treatment, you guys, I was 2 weeks sober. And I had, like I said, that's when I stopped being a half-asser, right? But I got out, and I was 2 weeks sober, you guys. And I remember just being like, wanting to get high, having the cravings for drugs. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was like the mental obsession was still there. I still thought about drugs. I still thought about the relief produced by drugs. And I was really, really struggling. And I remember, they wouldn't let me have any contact with Neil those last 2 weeks. Well, because Neil and I were very codependent on each other. And he was the main person who supplied me with the means to get drugs because, he had money and I didn't. And he was my fiance, my baby daddy. So, I gotta charge my phone. Okay, there we go. So, they were like making it to where I couldn't see him. So those last 2 weeks of rehab, I hadn't talked to Neil. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't even know if he was sober, you guys. Like, that's how, I didn't have any contact with him. I really want to sit this phone down. Anyway. So, here I am, 2 weeks sober, out in the free world. My son is in DHS custody. I have a lot of stuff to do. I've got to get a job. I've got to start going to these court dates. I got to take these parenting classes. I mean, they load you up, right? And I didn't have a car or anything, you guys. Like, I was totally dependent upon Neil, okay? Totally dependent on him. He did everything for me. So I got out of treatment and I wanted to get high. And I was crying, y'all. I wanted to get high. And that's when Neil told me that he got put on Suboxone while I was in rehab. I remember when he first told me that. I was really mad at him, y'all. Because I had always been taught that the way you get sober was through abstinence. And that if you didn't get sober through abstinence, then your recovery was not fucking shit. You weren't in recovery. I had heard so many horror stories about Suboxone. And the only experience I had with Suboxone was using it in between getting high on dope, right? I used to shoot up Suboxone strips for about 6 or 7 times. And I don't even know if I felt anything, but I just thought that if I shot them up, then that was going to be good. So that's what I would do. And then when I was in different detox or different halfway houses, I would take them because I knew that they couldn't test for buprenorphine at that time. So Suboxone was just always a way that I could like get high under the radar, right? I didn't understand that if you took it every day that you weren't going to get high, right? I didn't understand that. And so I think that's what happens with a lot of people, you guys, is like they don't understand that if you take Suboxone as prescribed, that you're not going to get high from it. Uh-oh. There we go. Hey, there we go. That if you take it as prescribed, it's not going to get you high. Like, it's just going to keep you regular. And that's what my experience has been now. Like, I don't get high from Suboxone. I've been on it for fucking 4 years almost, right? And without it, I wouldn't be here. Because that day I got out of treatment, you guys, I wanted to use so bad. And so this was what this is what I was facing. Here I am, 2 weeks sober, moving back into the house with the person who I use drugs with all the time, with my chief enabler, Neil, and I'm his chief enabler. We're both extremely codependent on each other. Hey! And I'm moving back in, and we're starting our life, and we've got to get our son back. And so I remember talking to the DHS caseworker. Her name was Kawachi. You guys, best caseworker ever. She's not the one who took Nathaniel away from me. She just stepped in because the girl who took Nathaniel away actually quit her job 2 weeks after she did it. What do you know? That's the kind of shit that always happened with DHS. They couldn't hold on to no workers because they're not worth shit. Because honestly, they don't do anything but take your kid away and then make you do all these things, dangle these things in front of you to do until you get your kid back. They didn't give me any therapy. They didn't give me any classes on how to stay sober, nothing like that. They didn't teach me anything. I had to learn that on my own. I had to seek that help myself. They didn't give me any assistance. The only thing they did was make me jump through damn hoops. And so I did all the work. I went out and got a sponsor. I went to AA. I went and did the work. I worked the 12 steps. I wrote my fucking whole life story down so that way I could share it with my therapist. Like, I did work when my son got taken away. And so that's how I got sober, was because of the work that I did. Not because of any help that they gave me, because they sure as hell didn't do shit. But I'm not resentful against the DHS anymore because I know that my son got taken because of my own actions. But I think it's a broken system, and there was a lot of things that they could have done to help me do better, and to ensure that I stay sober. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you don't just take someone's kid away and then dangle them over them and expect them to know what to do. That's Annie. So it's just super sad, you guys. Like, so anyway, this all came around to tell you that I got sober and I got my son back in 10 months. That's how long it took me to get him back from the state. 10 months exactly. 10 months from the day they opened my case to the day they closed my case. I got Nathaniel back, and it was amazing. I could go on here and I could tell you stories about me and the girl who had him, and that's what I'll do. I'll do that for another day. But I'll tell you my experience with the girl who had my son and her husband. But my parents found out that I had gotten Nathaniel back and that I was sober. And they were still living in New York, remember? And so my 1 year sobriety birthday is July 13th. So my dad flew. My dad had me and my husband and my son go up to New York on the train to visit him. And you guys got to understand, this is the first time I've been sober in 12, 13 years in front of my dad. Um, my dad took me, and he took me shopping because he always knows. They lived in Gainesfort, New York. It's up by, it's in the very top corner of New York by Canada. Gainesfort, which is, gosh, what's the other place named? Schenectady, it's past there. But, I went up there to hang out with my parents, and I spent a week with them. Me and Neil did. And my dad took me and Neil shopping at the Coach outlet and bought me a new Coach bag. Yes, that's it. And bought, yeah, that's where they live here now. So let me tell you the story. So they bought me a Coach purse. They bought Neil a new Coach wallet. And my dad was like, happy 1 year sobriety birthday. He was like so excited. Yes, that's where it's at. Yeah. And we went out to eat at this Italian restaurant where they have these huge meatballs that are this big. It was so much fun. But my dad was like, we're coming back to Arkansas. And I was just like, what? And they were like, yeah, we're going to come back. And so my parents moved back. I think I had 2.5, almost 3 years sober when they finally moved back. But they've been back now for about 1.5 years. And maybe a little bit longer than that. But they live in the Village in Hot Springs now, and I can go down there anytime I want to see my dad, and I can talk to my dad anytime. And you guys, me and my dad went from not talking at all for 13 years. We went from my dad being ashamed of me and embarrassed. We went from my dad not even wanting me to come over to my dad calls me and checks on me now and says, what are you doing? Or he'll show up and take me out to eat. Or he'll send me $50 and say, do something nice for yourself, right? This will be my 4-year sobriety birthday because I got sober in 2015. I think my parents moved back in like 2017, or 2018, the beginning. I'll be 4 years sober this July. And then next July will be 5 years. 2020 will be 5 years. But, my relationship with my dad, you guys, is so fucking awesome today. And me and my dad are so much alike. And I love my dad so much, you guys. Like, I put him through so much hell that he had to leave because he was so distraught over me. And I was so sick, you guys. Like, it was just horrible. But I love my dad, and I'm so excited, you guys, to have him back in my life and for him to know that he means the world to me and that I don't ever want to go back to that life, you know? And so my story is crazy and it's a long story, but it's hard work. It's hard work staying sober, you guys, even being on Suboxone. There's some days when I go driving and I think about meth and I think about the energy it gave me and how I could clean my whole house if I got high. But then I think about what's on the other side of getting high and what it does to me and how I'll ruin everything and how my son won't have his mom. And that's what helps me stay sober. Hey, Marissa, if you email me or message me on Instagram, I'll send you my address. I don't have a P.O. box yet, but I'll send you my address. I really do need to get a P.O. box, you guys, because I would love to just be able to have y'all's letters and stuff and read them. I would read them on camera and stuff. So, but if you message me on Instagram or on email, I'll send you my address, baby. I would love to get something from you. That would be so cool. I love getting stuff from you guys. And you can ask all the other people that sent me stuff. I always just give my address out. Yeah, your girl's a little crazy in that way. But here's the thing, you guys, like, I'm not afraid of people because I've already been in my addiction and I've done such horrible things. Like, I'm not worried about some crazy on the internet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not concerned. I've put myself through hell. I did terrible things in my addiction and terrible things to myself. Nobody else could do anything worse to me than I've already done to myself. Do you know what I'm saying? So I need to charge my phone, damn it. I love you guys. I'm going to get on the other